Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on Tuesday, July 23rd at 9 a.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
If me smarter than that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Come on, wake up. It's my turn. Here we go.
Maybe I'm not.
So we have 20 present, 1 absent. Presentation of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence. There's a couple of correspondence items, the unassigned fund balance, the resolutions from Sister Bay and Gardner concerning EMS. Any other correspondence anybody chooses to add or would like to add or speak about? Public comment. I'll now open up for public comment. Does anybody in the audience want to make a public comment? If you do, please approach the mic. State your name and address.
Good morning, Paul Zahn, Forestville.
Good morning.
The decision to draw down the Forestville flowage was made without respecting the input of area residents. This resulted in upsetting the vast majority of southern Door County, clearly proven by the signatures of over 850 on petitions and nearly 400 on recalls, not to mention many groups and our neighbors in Kewaunee County. As our representatives, it is your job to represent all of Door County, as your decisions affect many hundreds of citizens. Please be more informed and considerate when doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good morning.
Good morning. Laura Jorgensen from the Village of Forestville. As outlined in the 2018 to 2022 capital improvement project, on page 114, there was actually a project for the Forestville Dam Mill Pond improvement as submitted by the former head of Parks Department, Eric Ailson, on May 15th of 2017, which had a priority level deemed necessary, that this project was necessary. The description was to rehab the mill pond to improve water quality and recreational opportunities by implementing recommendations of a lake management plan, which we have yet to see. Justification was to reduce water pollution, create a 3-year annual tax levy, and in 2020 use $175,000 as a county share or match of a larger grant-funded project. Now, in the 2018 county budget, the parks deleted this project and removed the money that was slated for it. The Soil and Water Department deleted the project for 2019. I requested the detailed project plan that was proposed by Eric Ailson so that I could determine the proposed method of the cleanup. And I was responded to, because actually that project plan was not included in the CIP packet as it stated it should have been. It was omitted. I talked with Ben Nelson of the Parks Department, and he said that if the document actually exists, that he'd get it to me. He's still working on that. I assume, though, without any actual documentation, that a $350,000 budget, $175,000 from the county levy, as well as a matching potential grant from the DNR, was slated for a more intense project than just a no budget drawdown, which that's where we're at right now. So how could a request for a big project be put in proposing a tax levy without a detailed project plan? I was on the stakeholders committee and in all of the meetings regarding this matter since the fall of 2018, and we were told that there is no money budgeted for this or funds for this project. And that's why we ended up coming to the determination of doing a drawdown, because it was the cheapest. And they also told us that the project does not qualify for DNR or state-funded grants because it's an impoundment, which I find is really interesting. And also, I just wanted to touch on this whole recall situation that's happening right now in the Southern Door area. Almost 400 people actually signed the recall petitions in both District 2 and 3 because they were furious that the representatives in these districts did nothing to represent their small rural community. These are the same people that we voted into their seats for multiple terms now. Whatever the outcome is of this recall, I would remind every elected official that's sitting in this room right now, including myself, because I am an elected official, that if you don't listen to your constituents and you don't protect their best interests, that they do have the right to remove you from your position just as fast as they voted you in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else?
My name is Christine Reed.
Good morning.
I live on the Forestville Flowage. In February 26th, I requested a meeting with Friends of the Forestville Dam and members of this board. I received a reply on February 28th, quote, "I would not be able to meet until later in the month and will not schedule it until I return." That was February 28th for a meeting at the end of March. That has not happened. On June 27th, I followed up in the same email string. "Time is of the essence and 3 months have slipped away. Can we please schedule this meeting?" That's almost a month ago, and there was no reply at all to any of our requests to be included in discussions, decision-making, etc. This morning, I asked the chairman of the board, and he said that meeting is not going to happen. And that's the first reply that we've had. I'd like to address the recall for District 2. Yesterday, we received a certificate of insufficiency. There were plenty of signatures to qualify for a recall, qualified signatures. However, we, the people who collected the signatures, made a mistake on the certification signature line and used whiteout. So all of the signatures on those pages were deemed disqualified. We have to start over, and we will. We're going to take out another recall petition, go back to the same people, explain the mistake that we made, ask them to sign again. Before we do that, I'd like to request clarification during the supervisor response to a clarification on Mr. Ninus's statement regarding the recall, because it is addressed specifically to us. Quote, "It is truly sad that those affected with property on the dam did not come to a collective decision to resolve this situation that is both financially effective and in accordance with proven scientific studies." We do not understand what that means. We do not understand where we failed as residents. It is truly sad, means that we did something disappointing. Those affected with property on the dam, I would have to take that to mean us, the residents there, did not come to a collective decision to resolve the situation. We didn't know we were supposed to resolve a situation at the dam, whether it's the contamination, the runoff, the drawdown. We do not understand. We're requesting clarification during the supervisor response. One more thing on the recall. Quote, "I abstained from voting on the recommendation of the Corporation Council because I own property on the mill pond," end quote. I don't know if the Corporation Council is here, but we would like clarification on this also. Does the Corporation Council believe that the same conflict of interest exists for being a participant in the so-called stakeholders committee? How can it be a conflict of interest to vote and not a conflict of interest to to be on the stakeholders committee, which also involved a vote. So we would like clarification on that. Respect is a two-way street. We feel that we've been respectful, but we're not getting the same respect back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Jerry Witt. Excuse me, we live in Forestville on the dead end. I'm so disappointed in this government. You were voted in to represent us. We have fought you tooth and nail about this drawdown. It can cause illness. It's going to reek to high heaven. What about all the wildlife that's going to get caught in the muck? I'm afraid a child will get caught in there. How are you going to get them out of there? It's just a disaster. That pond was beautiful when we first bought 5 years ago, and it is a disaster today. I was ashamed to take my friend down there this week to look at the disaster that pond has turned into. As our elected representatives, I should think that you would protect our property values and our way of life. And at this point, it's a total disaster. If you don't live there, go down and look at the mess. The cattails are completely taking over that pond. It's ridiculous. There's no way you can use it for recreation. We had a neighbor that bought a pontoon. He took it out once and had to sell it. It kept getting stuck. I'm just so disappointed in you. You're supposed to represent us. And I really wish you would. And the lack of respect, the way people have totally blown us off. You talk to them, their eyes glaze over. They don't even pay attention to you. This is our lives. This is our retirement and our property values you're playing with. And I don't know why you insist on doing something and that is really not going to help. That is never going to dry out the way you say it's going to. And I just wish you'd open your minds and listen to us. This is our lives you're playing with.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'll close public comment. Any supervisor's response? Approval of the minutes of June 25th, 2019, regular meeting.
We're here for a response. We'd like to have some answers.
The supervisors can choose to respond or not respond. They have chosen not to respond to public comment today.
I'll respond if they want a response.
Okay.
Area residents. We involved the area residents. We held a meeting right down there. All those people were invited. They knew about it. Nothing was secret. Talked about the capital improvement plan. That is only a holding instrument of what might happen over the next few years. That's not a document that is in stone. So to say something was in the capital improvement plan didn't come to pass, well, a lot of things get put in the capital improvement plan that don't come to pass. Obviously, they don't do their homework to understand what they're talking about. Is it the cheapest thing to draw down? No, the cheapest thing is to take the dam out and forget it, because that's what the DNR said was the best plan, and they like to see that happen throughout the state. Now they talk about respect, the two-way street. That's correct, it is. We went and got experts to tell us what the best way to do to handle that situation was. They didn't like what they heard from our experts, so our experts are idiots, and they want their experts who tell them what they want to hear. Those are the ones we should listen to. You want respect, it is a two-way street. We did our due diligence on this project. We're doing what's right for the community as a whole. It will be better when it's done. That's what the experts tell us. And give us some respect for the time and energy we put into this and the decision we made. If it's not what you like, that doesn't mean we don't respect your opinion. We did. There. Now they've got their response. If they don't want to listen to what is
No,
right,
no additional response.
that's on them, not on us.
We're talking hundreds of people, not a...
We have
No additional comment is allowed. You had your opportunity.
Never made a statement about them removal.
Approval of the minutes of June 25, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Changes, corrections, additions, deletions? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Any business or updates? Resolutions. Before we move to the resolutions, we're going to move down to our special reports under new business for our 2019 J1 visa students from Jindazen and others. Grant, do you want to handle this?
Good morning. Very briefly, has become our tradition. By very briefly, I mean my introductory remarks. We have asked the J1 students from our sister city, Jingdezhen, who are here this summer working in Door County, to come and introduce themselves and say a few words about themselves and answer any questions you might have. So I believe we have 8 or 9 of the students here today. I believe there may be a dozen from Jingdezhen that are working. And I would ask all of them to come forward and at once. You can all come up here.
Please, come up front. Stella, come on. Ann, come on. All of you.
Oh,
Please.
hello.
Want to have him speak in the mic?
Yeah, if you could, you get to go first.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so happy to meet you here. And I'm Stella. I come from Hebei province of China. It's very near from the capital of China, Beijing. And I work for Dave at Sister Mobile station. And if some of you want to learn Chinese, I think I will be a good teacher. And sorry, a little nervous. That's all. Why I'm the first? Okay.
Thank you, Stella.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm from China. I come from Jingdezhen University. So we are sister city, yeah. Okay, and I work in the Mobile Sub Express, and then I'm a little nervous. Okay, I'm happy to come here. Everyone in here, you are very friendly. I like everyone. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I come from China, Jingdezhen University, and today I'm very happy to come here. Thank you, you guys gave me a chance. I work in Allison Bay, work as a housekeeper. Allison Bay is a peaceful town, and there are many beautiful sceneries. At first, I come to the United States. I'm not used to eating here's food, but now I fall in love with it. It's amazing and yummy. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nico. I'm from Jingdezhen University in Jiangxi Province, and I'm glad to be here. I work at Bayview Resort next to the Viking Grill restaurant in Allison Bay as a housekeeper. And I really enjoy the life here, the friendly people and the beautiful view. I always get along with people easier stay in China here. So I really like here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deng Zi. You can call me Michelle. And I am an outgoing girl, and I like singing, dancing very much. I study in Jingdezhen University, and my hometown is Nanchang, which is also in Jiangxi province. I work in Alpine Resort as a housekeeper. It's a tiring job, but I work with my friends from different countries. It's very nice. Dole County is a beautiful place. So is my workplace, Egg Harbor. I love this place. I would like to express my gratitude that we have such a program so that we can have an opportunity to make friends with people from different countries, practice our oral English, and experience the life in America. Most importantly, we can be more independent and improve ourselves in many kinds of parts. How time flies. We already spent half time of this travel. I hope happy time will go on in the rest of time, and I wish everybody has a nice day. Thank you for listening.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harry, and my Chinese name is Zhong Haimei. I come from Jingdezhen University, and my hometown is in Ganzhou City in Jiangxi Province. And I'm very glad to stand here to introduce myself. It's been 54 days when we came here, and I have made many new friends here and visit some interesting place, and I work at Alpine Resort. It's near Egg Harbor, and I really like the environment here, and the pace of the life is comfortable, and I think we will have a happy time in the following times. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen, and my Chinese name is Cui Wenjie, and I come from China. I study English in Jingdezhen University, and I work at Square Garage in Jacksonport. And I like here. There are friendly people and beautiful view. So I think I join the life, stay here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I also come from Jingdezhen University. My major is English, so I come here to practice my English. Dole County is a very beautiful city. I love here. I work at Square Lodge in Jacksonport. I have a pretty time in here, so that's all. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yu Yating. My English name is Rosie. And my major is preschool education. I study in Jingdezhen University. I work for Alpine Resort as a housekeeper. Yeah, it's all. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate your coming to Door County and working with our businesses and enjoying everything we have to offer. I know you're going to go downtown Sturgeon Bay shopping now. Right? And then we'll get back together and meet you for lunch.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Okay. Resolution 2019-45. Approve the United States Forest Service Cooperative Weed Management Area Grant for Invasive Species Education and Control. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got the right page here. The next three are all grants from various sources. The first one is to 2019-45. Oh, I'll make a motion to, first let me just make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-45, 2019-46, and 2019-47. We'll do all three of those if that's acceptable.
Fine by me.
Second for that question.
All right. So the first one is United States Forest Service Cooperative Weed Management Grant for the amount of $40,000. The second one, 46, is donation for prohibited invasive species management for $4,200 from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And the third one, 47, is a donation from Water Quality Notice of Discharge for $182,255 from the Wisconsin DNR for a one-year grant. Funding is provided to cost share installation of best management practices to address discharges from the site, meet agricultural performance standards and prohibitions, and cost share associated soil water conservation department staff expenses. I don't know if Erin's back there to give any further explanation or not. I don't think so, but she was. Oh, she is.
I'm here if there's
morning,
any
Erin.
questions.
Hope I did all right there, Erin.
Great, thank you, Ken.
Bob.
I just want to salute the Soil and Water Department for leveraging these grants. This is important work, especially in regards to the invasive species. You know, if we can have a little bit more, a few more eyes on the roads and boots on the ground, so to speak. Anything we can do to work with the Soil and Water Office and the Highway Department. You know, when we get a couple of weed seeds that fly out the window or out the back of a truck, we've got small infestations of invasives here and there, and when we can find those one or two plants and eliminate them before they become an infestation, not only on the right-of-way, but then spreading into private land. This is really important work that the Door County Invasive Species team is doing and what Soil and Water is doing. So I salute Erin's department and this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen.
Could you explain black swallow vort?
Sure. So this is one of those invasive species that Bob was mentioning where we have a small population that's become established. The funding is from DNR to control that population before it spreads. It's a vine that emits pheromones that mimic milkweed, which monarchs prefer to, are obligated to use for their larvae. And so the purpose of receiving the donation is to control that before it spreads.
I just want to throw in there that the nickname for black swallowwort is dog strangling vine, if that is any indication of how insidious this plant is.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to vote. We're going to go to the voter board.
We're going to attempt three simultaneously. Perfect. Okay. So we're voting on all three resolutions. That has passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Resolution 2019-48, the Capital Improvements Plan 2020 through 2024. Kathy's not here. Does somebody else from Finance want to introduce the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-48, Capital Improvement Plans for 2020 to 2024. It was reviewed by the Finance Committee and also, I believe, the individual committees, and is approved as presented here today.
Second.
Do you want to say anything?
Sure, maybe just for quick reference, on page 18 and 19 of your packet actually has, I guess, what I would consider the primary focus, which would be our planned expenditures for 2020. Likewise, if you recall, though, this is a 5-year planning document, so you will see the supplemental information that's been submitted in terms of our projections for carrying that out to 2023. I guess the main things are just to point out is it does show you in terms of the funding, in terms of whether it's levy or other items, in terms of whether it's from grant funds or money that's been carried over from the previous year. I guess the one thing just to point out would be on the bottom of page 19, or it'd be page 8 of the plan itself. It actually gives you a summary of where we came in terms of the CIP budget. And again, it came in at $4.526 million. Represents about a 2% increase, which is pretty much close to what we had projected in the budget model. So we tried to keep and move some of the projects around to make sure we're pretty much on target. In terms of this, in terms of the review, the only thing that really did change in terms of the plan as it went through the committee reviews is that we just made an adjustment to the county boardroom. That was increased a little bit just to make it ADA compliant. And we did make an adjustment for 2021 in regards to the cold storage for the sheriff building. But otherwise, for the most part, all of the items that were submitted, we either worked directly with the departments to build a consensus on how to best handle and fund for the project. So I think it's a pretty good proposal. And again, this is just a guiding document. If we would, again, in essence, adopt this today, what it will do is it give me guidance saying that I'll try to build this into the budget, but there could still be some changes, and we would report that as the budget came forward.
David?
Question. During the Finance Committee meeting, we talked about the Justice Center cold storage building, but I don't remember the committee itself deleting, making a recommendation. I thought it came from us, from the Sheriff's Department to us. It was already decided to be removed, and we just acknowledged it.
Correct. That is true. And again, that was actually, I guess what I should have clarified is I guess a change that we made as far as this an error that I made in terms of actually adding it for the 2021. Because what we did at finance is we looked up the minutes from public safety, and the motion was at public safety just to do the 1 year. So that was the change that was made in the document itself. But correct, finance did not remove it. It was actually not part of the original motion at public safety to include the 2021.
Okay, so can I get that wording changed then, just because of future document reasoning? Because the committee didn't officially, if I'm wrong, the committee did not actually make the motion to delete it. We basically acknowledged it. And I'm just looking at a document that's going to be around for 20 years.
What wording are you looking at?
Page 20, underneath Sheriff. First line entry. It's in bright red.
Oh, yes. We can make that amendment.
So we can delete that, or at least
Yes. Yes.
reference the Public Safety Committee that actually made the recommendation, right?
Correct. Yes, I can make that change.
Okay. I'd appreciate that. Does that require an amendment in some way, shape, or form? Is that to the motion?
That could be a clerical fix on our end.
Okay.
Linda?
So on page 18, we have a snow removal equipment building projected to cost $625,000. We have a cold storage building projected to cost $350,000 or more. Do we ever explore combining those efforts into one building? The snow equipment, is that going to be at the airport?
The description on that would probably be better if you went back to the description. So for the airport, that's actually their maintenance garage. So it's just not their snow equipment. So for that one, if you go, I guess at the airport right now, there is a building that's on site that has both their, there's a bathroom, plus there's I guess the lifts for where they do the repairs on the equipment. And what they're looking at doing is because the siding, and I know some of the committee members know about it from, Dan, they've done tours, but the building itself is actually rotting. The steel from, I don't know what was used in the wood at the time, but it's actually eating away the siding. So that was been in the works for replacing that building. And that's why the price is a little bit higher. So that's a heated building, fully insulated, because it's a warm storage. That's where they do the maintenance on the vehicles, and it'll also include an office and also restrooms. So it's not the same project per se. But when there is opportunities, we do look at it, but I'm just trying to say that they are two different projects.
So when we repair other snow removal equipment, is that all in a heated garage too? Couldn't we just take the whole equipment from the airport and put it in the heated garage at Duluth or S? And I don't know, we seem to be spending an awful lot on storage buildings lately. I'd like to see some combination and dual purpose.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can comment on is that obviously we have the facilities at the highway. And again, the highway kind of operates as an enterprise. So anytime you use their equipment or that space, it's all at a chargeable rate. So not that it can't be used, and it's something that we could pursue. But again, it's also not out at the airport where we have the equipment for the airport and the time to do that. So.
Regarding the cold storage building too, maybe I misunderstood like Mr. Inigal did, because at public safety, first we started off with a building that was going to cost, I believe, $250,000, and then we ended up with a building that was going to cost $575,000. So I thought the motion was to retain $200,000 that we had already set aside, or $250,000, and then we took action to add $150 to it. But I don't think the action said that's what we're going to spend, unless I'm mistaken.
So if you go on page 19 again, you actually will see what you just stated. So under that cold storage, you'll see the 199,625. That's being carried over. There was some funds spent out of that original 200,000, and then you'll see the 150 that was carried over. Or not carried over, it was actually planned for this year under the levy.
So are we going to get a cold storage building for $349,000?
Everyone says yes, but I'll wait, and I'm not going to hold my breath. But that's the process we'll go through. We're going through, I know in the building design, they're looking at ways to reduce the cost as far as the number of garage doors and stuff like that, because that adds on significant stuff. That's our target. I just know even on some of the discussions, I think it'll be tight. Again, when we look at that project cost, it's all in. So it's going to be the earthwork, concrete, and all those other items. So I'd like to say, yes, we can do that. And some people have told me that we can. So I'm being optimistic, but I'm also looking at prices on bids that have been coming in for us, and everything's coming in higher. So I don't want to guarantee something I don't know.
Dave? I guess, I led some of the discussion when that first number was presented at public safety, that it seemed excessively high, and through some discussion and exchange of ideas, we reduced it down to this. And then a couple days later, happened to talk to people in the construction business, and was contacted by one saying they had built somewhat similar buildings. I never explored it any further for a whole lot less money. And I brought that information both to Ken and to Wayne Spritka, and I hope they can explore that, those options. Take a look at what, if it is apples to apples comparison or what, or are we just getting a really high estimate to go from 200 or 250,000 up to 500 and some, even if it includes a little more. Again, this weekend I talked to someone in the construction business, and I didn't mention this at all. It was an entirely different thing that the county's working on, and he says, well, it's a good time to do it now. Construction costs are down. So I know we're hearing two different things, and I think the committee as a whole and the finance committee looked at this building, the cold storage building, costing $500,000+, and the shop out at the airport too, that has a very high price tag to it. And I think we really need to, explore some other options, some other design people or something if necessary.
David?
And along that train of thought, due to the nature of my business, I've communicated just the basic interest of a building of that size, and that number just doesn't seem right. Doesn't fit in line with what I experience in my world, including when we talk about downsizing the size of the building in order to fit within the higher dollar value. Just something seems out of place that I can't.
Right. So again, in terms of process, I mean, we'll run it through our traditional process, and like I said, if the bids come in where we're thinking or where you're some of those discussions. We talked with some of those contractors, and we will add them onto our bid list. So again, I'm trying to be very optimistic that we can get those numbers in. We'll make the appropriate design changes. And again, I'm hoping that the individual we're working with in terms of the estimates, that they are high. But we'll go through that bid process, and if the numbers come in on target or where you're thinking they'll come in, then we'll know that, because it'll get published throughout Northeast Wisconsin in terms of potential bidders and contractors to work on it. So don't know
And
about it.
knowing that we typically come back with very similar numbers as we put out those kinds of bids, maybe we need to change and reconsider how we do our typical way of bidding stuff out then. Because clearly I doubt that, since my past experiences, dimensional dollar value differences to this scale, those individuals probably would never see any effort to bid this kind of a project. Even though they're very capable of doing that kind of project.
John?
Are our tax dollars held to a higher standard by state law as far as bidding out, the bidding out process? Ken, I think we had a discussion some time back on that. And my question to that would be, if that would be the case, that we have to live to a higher standard of building codes, because of the state law, can't we approach, I guess, through our legislative committee to go back to the state and ask for a change? And this isn't a building that's occupied by people, it's occupied by damaged vehicles and collected evidence per se. I can't see having to live to that same standard when we could have Forest Construction or all these other companies that I know can build this building a lot less, at least 50% less, if not more, than what the costs are out there right now. It just seems ludicrous that we have to pay such a high price for a storage building that isn't occupied by people, and I guess I would be interested in see if we could pursue a legislative result to this. Probably not right away, I guess, but I'd say, certainly in the future for everybody's sake in the state that goes through these types of building projects.
And to my comment in reference to his higher standard as far as building code goes, I've reviewed numerous municipal buildings, private buildings, corporate buildings. The state building code for commercial buildings is the same regardless of who occupies it. It's based on the structure and the intent of the structure, not a municipal building, other than certain federal regulations that kick in, but it would not kick in the case of a storage building.
Right. I was just going to say that there's two parts to your question, I think, from what I've heard, is, and I think we have to talk about that. So we are going to be, I guess, a little bit more aggressive in terms of how we're going to bid out the project. So traditionally, like for example, the community center, that's such a large project, you'll publish that and you're going to get, again, it's not requirements, but you'll get certain types of companies that bid on that larger of a project. I think with the cold storage, I think we can be more direct in trying to, I guess, draw in some other types of builders that traditionally may not watch bids on bid sites, that type of thing. So we can do some direct mailings to some of the companies that we think might be able to do that, and that might help us with the pricing itself. The second one, in terms of this requirements and the standards, is actually, if you recall, we actually did pass a resolution, and that was one of the things that Wayne came in. There is a requirement that actually adds some costs for us on these types of projects. Is one is the bidding process, but then also having to go through certain types of design and design firms. And that's a requirement that we do have to follow right now. And we did pass a resolution that was earlier, because WCA at the conference had talked about that, about legislation that would increase the bid amount. I think it was from $25,000. They're looking at increasing it in grant. I don't know the exact number. I thought they increased it to $100,000 as part of the proposal, and we did pass a resolution supporting that move. So,
thank you.
Bob?
I just have a general question, being pretty new to this and not on any of the committees that deal with this. So this is a capital improvement program 2020 to 2024. So we wouldn't look at, or is this like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, is this something that we wouldn't really talk about again until 2024, looking at the next 5 years? I mean, this is, or is this sort of something we do every year?
Every year.
It is, okay.
Right. So the main purpose of this document is obviously the 2020 gives me direct guidance in terms of what to build into the budget.
Okay.
Then the future years is really a guiding document, because remember, in my budget model, I kind of have it set up where we have to come in each year as far as our projects. So if we see in this document, for example, let's say in 2022, there's $10 million of projects planned, and we just know we can't do it, that's where we sit down and try to make adjustments so we can kind of smooth that out.
Okay.
But each year, we'll look at it and we'll make that additional 5-year plan each single year.
So we're just always looking out 5 years, but we do look at this every year?
Correct.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I appreciate the clarification and reminder. Thank you.
Ellen?
Another probably question that everyone else knows the answer to. But on the highways, on County A,
Which page?
page 28, why are the only federal dollars allotted to County A? So we have state and local dollars, but for some reason we have a $2 million federal line.
So that's so there's a federal grant that we got notice on for that, but then you also see under the levy, we do have a levy portion that's also accounted for that. So that'd be our expenditures toward that. So there's actually a blended, so that's both federal money and also some levy dollars that go to that for a total of $2.9 million.
But then why is that not for other highway improvements? Why is it only County A?
That was a project, I know John knows part of the answer, but that was a project we've been working on for several years with the DOT in terms of applying for federal funds, and just based off what, why don't some of the other county roads qualify? I'm not sure the exact logic of how they picked those, but it's one of those that was identified as qualifying for federal funds, and they applied for the grant through the DOT, and that's how it was selected. It was actually denied, and then we got informed that it got reconsidered because some other projects fell through, and it got added on back onto the list, which is great news for us.
John, do you have any?
Well, don't quote me on this, but yes, the federal government changed their mind a couple of different times, and they shortened it up and they reprogrammed it. And as you look on the highway department, you'll see we're out 5 years, but like we like to say over there, that's not poured in concrete. If we take a road inspection on next spring, we see a road is bad, we'll change it. It's just a holding place that we have to put it in. And it kind of, like you said, it all depends what the federal government, whatever side they got in bed that morning, you know what we're going to do.
Ken?
Also, you asked about not having federal money on other projects. Okay. Not all projects, it depends on the scope of the project, whether or not they qualify for federal funds. And when you take the federal money, and we've turned it down sometimes because they demand certain features in the project that aren't practical for that project as far as we deem it. Okay?
Randy?
Yeah, I think County A has got 3-foot paved shoulders on each side too for bikes. That might have something to do with federal money.
I guess, Helen, a real fine example would have been, I'll call it C out here, the Loose Street. How many times that was changed and how we had to jump through the hoops for the federal money to combine with Sturgeon Bay and that. That got changed many times.
Linda?
I think last year, every time it comes around to budget or a resolution, we had talked about, how everything is lumped into one, so you're approving all or nothing. So maybe for the future, we could think about separating out these capital improvement projects. So yeah, I'm okay with highways, but I'm not so much okay with airport. Or set a dollar threshold. Anything that asks for more than 500,000, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So, just a thought.
Just a comment, there's nothing prohibiting you from discussing each project right now, and if you wanted to make amendments to those projects, we can do so.
Vinnie?
I just have one in general. When I first looked at this and looking closely with the federal allocations, I just appreciate the county taking the opportunity to receive those federal funds because they're large amounts. And you compare that to what the tax levy is, and it's tiny. So I think it's a really good opportunity, at least when these projects, and I know it takes a lot of hard work to get those grants to come through, as John was mentioning. So when you compare what it costs to what we're being funded to help make it happen, I appreciate that. So thank you.
Linda?
If we were to start looking at each individual numbers, wouldn't that need to go back to the committees then as well?
No.
No?
These are the committee recommendations that have been approved by the committees and forwarded up to us for approval.
Right.
So,
But if I make a motion to slash the snow removal equipment building at the airport to 325 instead of 625, the Airport and Parks Committee isn't going to be upset?
well, they might be upset, but you'd have to convince a majority to approve it, and if that happened, it would happen. Right.
So,
Again, yeah, you can definitely do that, but again, I guess I'm just trying to, I guess that one, I'd be more concerned about that one, because I don't think, if Airport and Parks know, and Dan can provide more information, but that building is entirely different. I mean, it is completely insulated, it has heating for the entire building, it has the new septic, or not new septic, but it has new bathrooms that's tied in, we have to upgrade, I know some of the things for that, it's going to be a completely new, so I mean, to me, it's a night and day difference in terms of, I guess what I consider the cold storage, so that's why you're seeing the higher number related to that.
can I ask if the airport storage building was bid out? Was it bid out?
No.
The snow removal equipment building, was it bid out? No.
No, it has not been bid out. Normally, we do through our process, this is still, I guess what I consider, we consider all the programming phase, so we haven't done anything in terms of bids or anything related to actually getting solid numbers. The best that we can do, I know with with this one, they're working with Omni, and that's because they're working with the federal, the FAA in terms of actually going through the design of the building, as far as meeting, because part of it's also going to be meeting the requirements of the FAA in terms of what's provided in that building. So I know Omni is the one who's given us some of the initial projected figures back, and again, this is Omni who's done other projects throughout the state, and that's what they're seeing some of the projects come in at for similar type buildings as far as the per square foot cost. Again, once we get to the point where we have a final design and we go out for bid, if it comes in less, we'll take it. But again, we're just working off projections, and this is just the planning document of where we think the budget will come in for it.
Joel?
Yeah, Linda, just somebody that's got a little bit of experience with airport work from being on the island and our own airport, dealing with the Bureau of Aeronautics and the FAA is a whole different can of worms, and I'm sure the Parks Committee, the Buildings Committee, and Keith certainly out there have done their homework on this, and the management team here. I'm assuming that maybe, if not, hasn't happened, it will happen, that there might be BOA funding for this, 80-20, 90-10, something possibly. Keith's probably explored that. So, as it's being discussed here, this is strictly a placeholder document. I mean, everybody that's been here long enough knows how this works to the point, I think, that it can be changed at any given time, and overriding a committee at this point in the game, certainly the opportunity is here to do that. Whether or not it's recommended or suggested, I don't know, but it's allowed. But, I mean, I think that's a lot of money too, but that's a big building, and because it is the nature of it and its use and intent being the fact that it's regulated by the BOA, there's a lot of strings attached. Keith is well aware of that, and I'm sure he's big time talking with the committee and, with Ken and what's going on. So just history on how it works. It's not the per se regular structure that we would do because of where it's located. There's a lot of strings attached. And I want to make one more comment on another thing, back to the highway thing. As another example that a lot of people probably forgot about that they're on the highway committee, 2 years ago when they were looking at doing from Sturgeon Bay North up towards Little Harbor up there, that whole project was going to be a federal project. That thing got cut back because there was so much red tape, so many strings attached that the feds wanted the county to do, which is just unrealistic. Right down from moving gravestones, moving power lines, moving everything. It was going to be absolutely not even an option. And that's an example of the county said, we're not taking the money because there's too much tape involved. So it got cut and scaled way back. So everything's worked its way through the committees, and it's time consuming to say the least. And everybody's vetted it. I'd like to think at this point in the game, it's been vetted. So,
Dan?
my comment.
Yeah, I could give you a little history on how the airport thing evolved, but really that building now is under the highway airport rather than Airport and Parks. Airport and Parks doesn't exist anymore. So this is really the highway committee's fault.
Interesting choice of words.
Yeah.
So, but when I first got on county board, just a quick note, The airport was plowed by the highway department, and George McQueen read the statutes and said that, the statute said that the airports had to be plowed immediately after a storm. And there's a pecking order on how the highways are plowed. First the state highway, then the county highway, then the town highways, then they got to the airport. So they decided to buy a plow truck for the airport and take it away from the highway department. And that's how they initially started plowing the roads at the airport, by buying their new truck to do that. And then, of course, they had to have a building to put it in, so they built a building to put it in, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And now you have, I don't know how many pickup trucks on the airport, parks, and it's unbelievable.
Dave?
To Supervisor Waite's questions, and maybe this helps me understand some of this also. Granted, it's vetted through all the committees and that stuff. But can these bigger ticket physical type of projects have like a synopsis sheet, a brief description when they first come on to the CIP listing submitted with this? Something that gives us, those that have not participated, yes, we can go back to the minutes and go look for that and so forth, but you've got questions here that are being asked that maybe a synopsis page would do well to help us understand why we're putting this into that system in the first place. Not the highways, that's maintenance. But I'm talking buildings, structures like that.
Tom?
I also, and this is kind of an open-ended question, I mean, I don't know, as far as when we look at these buildings and the projected costs, I mean, and again, this is an open question, I'm not necessarily directing to anybody, I know Wayne's not here, but, you know, are we looking at sustainability practices when we look at these buildings? You know, if we're looking at, you know, super insulated walls and ceiling, then that cuts our energy cost in the future, and then we save that money in the long run. So sometimes the expense up front is worth it to have an efficiently run operation. You know, solar is another great example. I mean, we're at a point now where solar has gotten so cheap that we're actually doing a disservice to the public if we don't put solar on every new building we build. So, I mean, we got at least like a 5 to 7 year turnaround on solar projects now. And that's, you know, when we look at, I think of the Yonkers building, $32,000 or $33,000 a year on electric bill, you know, you can totally slash that by investing a little ahead, you know, up front with solar and other efficient design. So I guess, again, sort of an open question, and just that if we are planning for sustainability and efficiency in the long run, then a little bit more cost up front makes it more palatable. Because I look at these numbers too and think, well, that's a lot of money, but, you know, trying to suss it out, I'd like to see us making sure that we are being proactive that way.
Laura?
Yes, to go off of several of the supervisors' responses, if there's projects that come forward that are over the $500,000 mark, I think having a short synopsis or the history behind it, or perhaps not just the history, but how long they've been requesting and wanting and needing this. When I was at Airport and Parks many years ago, that discussion of this building was brought up, and I've been off the committee for a while. So, but again, to a new supervisor, if they may not know that request and that need, wanting to come forward from many years before they even got on county board. So it might be useful that way.
Biz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the bidding process, the administrator says that, well, sometimes we hold our breath. Well, this is the price that we pay with a great economy. All these construction companies are very, very busy. So this stuff goes out for bid. They've got a lot of work, and we found that out with all the projects on Cane Island. They have a lot of work, so the bids come in way over what we expected. And if the future stays like this, whatever we project for projects, I'm sure you can hold your breath. They're probably all going to come in very high because of the construction people being so busy.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make another comment. On page 18, at the very bottom, we have the 56 North 4th Avenue roof replacement, and then other, and that money is coming out of the Museum Expansion Project Reserve, as well as the one below it, the 56 North 4th Avenue repair and remodel work, other, money coming out of the museum expansion project. That amounts to almost $500,000, $487,000 plus. But I think the way I see this, I think there's some concern over buying the building and putting all this money in it. If we went ahead as planned some time back and put the expansion onto the museum, namely we bought properties to the east, by the time you dig foundations and build the whole building and add to the museum, I think spending this money on the 56 North 4th Avenue building and not do the expansion to the museum, and you know, that's where that money is coming from, I think it's probably turning out to be a lot less money than doing the expansion. If you had to do that expansion, this would be a good starting point, this $500,000, but putting the money in that building that we bought, and eventually archives will be in there and probably museum stuff that is so crowded that this is a very good use of that money coming out of the museum expansion project. Thank you.
Anybody else? Did we have a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
We did, okay. Then we'll go to the voter board. It's been a long time. Yes.
Some good points.
That has passed with a vote of 19 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent. Resolution 2019-49, approval of agreement for 5-year Insight contract. David?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-49, approval of agreement for 5-year Insight contract.
Second.
And I would ask that if Jason wanted to come up, if anybody had any questions for it. It just is here because it's greater than a 3-year contract requirement. Anything over 3 years needs to be approved by the board.
Good morning. Morning. Do you want to make any highlights on anything?
Well, essentially, you know, of course, I put my little notes down here to make sure I touch on everything. Essentially, we're going to save about $120 a month based off of our current AT&T contract. We've had multiple issues with AT&T when it's come to billing, making changes. They certainly don't react in a timely manner. This would eliminate that. Plus, there's been some issues with reliability where, unfortunately, Georgia has been a problem for us. Something goes down and it takes out the county phone system for a short amount of time, and it's happening all the way down in Georgia. We wouldn't have those same, I guess, weaknesses when going with a local company like Insight. We'll also have a few enhancements on those redundancy factors. So we're going to have you know, a station here and a station at the Justice Center, a feed, I guess you could say, coming in both, and we'll have the ability on the fly to flip over in the event that one of them is compromised. So a lot of the things that we've been working towards in the last couple of years we hope to solve and save some money in the same process.
Any questions? If not, we'll go to the voter board. Thank you. That has passed with a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Resolution 2019-50, Public Health Resolution requesting Wisconsin Legislature and the use of personal conviction waivers for school and daycare center immunizations. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-50, Public Health Resolution requesting the Wisconsin Legislature and the use of personal conviction waivers for school and daycare center immunizations.
I'll second.
Joe Krebsbach is here to give us a rundown on how we got to this point. We did have a very rich discussion at our Public Health Committee meeting in regards to the history behind vaccinations for our entire country as well as our state, and why such a resolution would be impactful for the state of Wisconsin and coming through the county.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning. Sue is not here, so I get for giving her a day off. I'll remember that next time. She gave you a memo that explained a little bit about the history. Basically, the Bill 262 is looking to change a small piece of verbiage within the law related to immunization. And it's asking to change the verbiage. There are currently 3 ways people can opt out of immunization for their children, and that includes religious, health, and personal conviction. This bill is asking to remove the personal conviction waiver and still leaves in people's individual ability to waive the immunizations based on religious or health reasons. So we're asking that we support that. We have an increased number of individuals that are not getting immunizations. I believe it's about 5 times what it was prior to this being put in place in the 80s. And as we see with measles and some of the other stuff that's going on, there is some desire to try and tighten that back up again.
Okay. Questions? On a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? What?
We could have a friendly revision of the resolution. We omitted 3 words on line 31 after legislatures. Rather than it read Wisconsin State Legislators, it read Wisconsin State Legislators representing Door County. Otherwise, Jill has to send it out to hundreds of people.
Oh,
Would you like to amend the motion, Megan, to include that verbiage?
I'm comfortable with that.
I'll second that.
Yes, sir.
I'll still second, sure.
Okay. So we will take a revote on the amended resolution.
Is there still time for a comment?
Sure.
Okay. I hesitate to say anything because I absolutely do not want to detract or to take away from the good work that our health people do. That being said, vaccines are wonderful things, but to this day, we still have vaccines that are stabilized with extracts from monkeys and very toxic chemicals. And I have a real hard time forcing people to do that if they don't want to. So I will be voting against this, and that's why. So thank you.
Laura?
Yeah, I'd love to just kind of come back. We had a great discussion at our committee level. When they see this come forward, it was, all right, we're taking people's rights away. And so there was a great discussion, and then what the discussion was, what we're approving of. So we put that in the agenda packet on the verbiage. Some of us shared our personal stories, our friends or families, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, in the end, as a public official, and what's best for the county or state, we came forward with this. We're still allowing people for medical and religious reasons, and I think overall with the trends that we're seeing over the last decade, people are opting out for convenience, and we do have a measles outbreak right now. Not in Wisconsin, but it could potentially happen. And I think this issue and this topic is a national one, not just this county or state one. And we have discussions about possibly a new resolution to come forward to support funding or marking some future money for the state to promote vaccinations and the importance of them. I understand Supervisor Boatman's comments, but in the end, as a public health and what our duties are, we felt this was the best to go forward.
I appreciate that, and I guess I'd like to see, and again, you're absolutely right, this is absolutely a national issue. I'd like to see more emphasis towards better research and development of vaccines that are just safer. That's my comment. Thank you.
Kissa?
I'm curious what you don't find safe about them, because
Statistically, yes, any medication, anything can have an adverse reaction or, something horrible happen. But that's with any medication. When it comes to vaccines, you have a higher chance of being struck by lightning than having a severe reaction to a vaccine. Typically, most of the reactions to vaccines are the usual sore arm, tears from kids, which I've seen many in my own house. But when it comes to vaccines, yeah, anything. I mean, people are allergic to a lot of things. People have reactions to a lot of things. But the ratio of actually having a severe reaction is very, very low. It happens, of course. But statistically, it doesn't happen enough to not look at all the good that they do. There's a reason why there's things like VAERS, and you can report reactions, and that gets listed, and that becomes a whole legal issue. But I'm curious what people feel is toxic in them. Because, for instance, like there was a scare that, I'm going to probably pronounce it wrong, but Thermosol, which everyone says is mercury. It is not the same mercury you find that kids used to play with, in science class, which actually is dangerous. What's in the vaccine, it's an agent to keep the vaccine stable longer and extend its shelf life. But the amount that's in a vaccine, you'll find more, for instance, in the average body from the food you eat. That's all.
Anybody else? Okay, so on a voice vote for the amended resolution, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Resolution 2019-51, supervisor compensation and reimbursement. Talked about this last month. Admin committee took a look at it, sent back this information for your perusal. Want to add anything?
Do you just want to summarize the changes?
Sure.
So just to summarize the changes from last month, and it's actually now written as a form of how it would be placed in our rules. This, the two things that were, modified is under the compensation. That was modified from $6,500 to $7,500. There was also we removed the clause in terms of getting penalized for missing the meetings. And then we clarified, what we did do is we added the, reimbursement for, what we consider citizen members. We clarified that portion because that was all brought up. The other item, I'm sorry, I did forget one thing, is we did also remove the vice chair at the recommendation of the admin committee.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious why the clause for missing meetings came out.
The discussion, as I remember at the committee meeting, was that there already was a methodology to remove a supervisor that wasn't performing, and that was by the voters in their individual district. And that rather than put some type of punishment in place, because it also included excused and unexcused absences, okay, as it was originally written. It was suggested that we just remove that quote punishment clause and let the voters decide in their district if their supervisor is performing for them or not.
Okay, thanks.
Did I say that right?
Yep.
John?
I don't know if I missed it or didn't see it in here. Was there anything, I know we talked about supervisors for the chair people for committees. Is there anything in there? We had talked about 250. Am I missing it here?
It's under compensation item 1C.
Yeah.
It's still in there.
Okay, I did miss it. Thank you.
Linda?
Discussion now, or? Okay.
Well, just so we're clear, or we're clear as mud, we're still really talking about two different compensation plans. We're talking about the one for salary,
but we're also discussing or have on the table today also keeping it as it is under the current reimbursement, so. Go ahead.
So our current per diem ranges from $150 to $225 per day. That exceeds every other Wisconsin county daily maximum in the survey summary that was provided in last month's packet. The proposed salary, which has now gone from $6,500 to $7,500, plus another $1,500, I'll call it for incidentals. So now we're looking at a salary that could be $9,000. Again, that exceeds every other county that was included in that survey in last month's packet. So I guess I would just ask that the administrative committee re-examine this, re-examine the supervisor compensation, look at going rates, and perhaps add some accountability standards so that attendance at these conferences and workshops, what are the merits of attending those? Why, how, number of supervisors attending. So I would like to see it go back to admin for more comparable and, like I said, going rates.
Okay. Nancy?
I'm more than happy to go with something different, but I do think the 7,500, sorry, Dan, is too much. I think it should be back down to the 65, at least that. Or compromise in between, I don't know, but it should be something lower.
Just want to point out just one thing for our discussion, I forgot to mention it. This does require what's considered a supermajority, so depending on, even with Kathy not being here, we need 14 votes for it to pass, if it was going to be suggested today. Just want to let you know. In terms of a change, if we don't get the 14 votes, then the status quo would exist in terms of maintaining our existing per diem policy.
Vinnie?
With the current system, I appreciate that we put the trust in the committee and the staff members of each department to determine which trainings and which conferences are useful to that committee. I think they're maybe closer to that than an admin committee would be, or if it's just a salary, then people could decide regardless. But I think that that's a good system to keep that connected to the committee that is working on it and the staff that's how the dialogues go in my committees. Is this a useful conference? Why? Who should go? How many people should go? What will the benefit be? That dialogue happens. I think that's important versus just you can go to anything, anytime. So I think that's great.
Megan?
What was the discussion behind the increase to 7,500?
Somebody on the admin committee, I'm trying to paraphrase this.
Sure.
An ad committee suggested that we be at the same level as the city as a comparable base. So that's where that number came from. Is my understanding.
Gotcha. I too believe that 6,500 was sufficient and hadn't heard any rumbles otherwise when it was in discussion prior, so.
Susan?
I would like to see us go to a salary model. I agree that I think the 65 is more reasonable than the higher amount. The other comment about keeping it with the departments is I think it's awkward for the departments to be deciders in this. I mean, the pressure on them to decide in favor of what a supervisor wants to do is not necessarily fair. So that's one of the reasons I think it's better to not have to keep them with the departments.
Helen?
Okay, so speaking from the city, I saw this and I was like, yes. But actually, for the city, it's 7,200. And I don't believe there's any extra for chairing a committee. And I don't believe the 1 or 2 meetings I've gone to were paid for. So there would not be the 250, there would not be the 1,500. So that might
mitigate.
So it's kind of not, it's little apples and oranges there.
Megan?
In addition, also, Helen, aren't there two city council meetings per month, or it's every 2 weeks?
I don't,
Is that accurate?
there are some people that are not on a lot of committees either.
Okay.
So there's plenty of committees that don't even have a council member on.
So it's a totally different animal?
Well, yes and no. I'm just saying that if you're comparing 75 to 72, the 72 also doesn't include chairing a committee, extra for chairing a committee, or going to a meeting out of our conference.
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 1,500, as I understand it, is not compensation. It is to cover the cost of a conference. That's registration, the motel room, the food expense. That's what that 1,500 is. If you go to the WCA and you stay 2 nights, you got a couple $100 in motel room, that's part of that 1,500. Once a supervisor gets to the 1,500, you go to legislative days, legislative exchange, those are overnighters, the Wisconsin Counties Association Conference, that's 2 nights. You've pretty much burnt up, and a lot of us supervisors go to those. That's at 1,500. You would have that pretty much burnt up. There's no, and the reason the 7,500 went up, that I'm okay with it, you no longer as a supervisor get paid to go out of the county or to go to any outside meeting. That's covered in the 7,500. You no longer get the $200 or the whatever it is for the WCA per day convention. You don't get paid for that. You go there and it's 0. That's where that 1,500 comes in. That counts, like I say, for the motel and that. So that's why the number is 7,500. That's why that went up from the 65 to cover what you're losing by not getting any pay. You go lobby on behalf of whoever. You won't get compensated for that. You'll get motel covered and that, and when you get to the 1,500, you don't go anymore. That's it.
Dan?
That's wrong what Ken just said. You won't go anymore. You can go, but you have to pay your own.
Oh, yes, you can go and pay your own way. Yes, I stand corrected. But it's on your nickel. Yes.
I just wanted to show you I'm paying attention to what you said.
You can go to all you want, but it's gonna be on your nickel.
Bob?
Again, pretty new here, but I'm just curious. It seems like annually there's the WCA, and then every 2 years, and then every spring is legislative exchange, and then every 2 years is the legislative lobby days, and that seems to be sort of a status quo for maybe attendance, or for the last number of years at least. And please correct me or fill me in. It seems that perhaps there's a trend that WCA is making more opportunities, and I guess I just bring up Ms. Lundahl, Ms. Shomo, and myself participate as Wisconsin County ambassadors, and so I think it's 3 times that we would go down to Madison, and so that's sort of an above and beyond thing, and so I wonder if that's taken into account, or if there's it seems like kind of there's the there's the standard things that happen, and then that seems like, I think it's a good thing. I've certainly learned a lot, and I feel like we've made some good progress talking to our legislators with these WCA events that seem a bit more maybe extracurricular. So I'm wondering if just those of you that have been here longer, is there like a trend that WCA is maybe having more opportunities? And I guess I realize that we are only deciding this issue for the next 2 years, so it's not, but it can't change in a year or 2 or 3 for that next election. But I'm just wondering if that seems to be a trend, that WCA is offering more opportunities, which I think is important for us to have our county voice heard at these state level things, that maybe that's something that is looked at, and again, is that trend happening, or is this just a special thing? I don't know. Again, being too new to really know. But.
Laura?
Sure. Yes, I think WCA, I'll answer his question, Bob. Yes, I think WCA is offering more opportunities. Just as yesterday, they offered a webinar that you can go on and learn. So there's a lot more educational opportunities, and that was a request from many of the counties asking them for more opportunities. Again, I look at that as, are you learning for your job? Is it for your position per se, or are you doing your homework to become better at your job? So you can look at if you want to get reimbursed or not. For me, for this coming forward for salary versus per diem, I think it's going salary simplifies things, the concept. It can save our chair, staff, questioning on time cards. It eliminates that. I think it's a consistency where you know what you're getting per month. And if I'm finding daycare costs or covering daycare costs or finding somebody to replace me at my job, it provides a little bit more for that. You know, we take an oath to this office to serve the people, not to serve X, Y, and Z committees. We get appointed or assigned to committees. You don't know what they're going to be, so you can't really account for how much possible money you're going to make in that given month. We do homework before the committee meetings. From my first year to the second term, my committees have changed. The first time around, I could expect a certain amount per month. Now I can't. Part of it is just I may be on more committees, but they don't meet regularly on a monthly basis. Some of those meetings happen after county board, so then you don't get paid for that second meeting. Or the chairs or the weather. The chairs may cancel a meeting, or there's weather. That doesn't mean I'm not doing work as a county supervisor. So putting myself out of the equation and just looking as an elected official, there's a responsibility and duty that comes with that to your people outside of committee work. And I hope all of us do that, and I do believe quite a few of us do that. I can't speak for everybody. To put myself in the equation on being a county supervisor and the amount of work that I'm doing, quote-unquote volunteering, or just it's as a supervisor. I would not be doing the work if I wasn't a county supervisor. Wisconsin Public Service just had a project to go through of my district. That started, I got a letter on that when I got appointed to this seat. That was over 2 years ago. That project is just finally finishing. There was a lot of hours that I put in, meeting with constituents, going to city meetings, addressing their concerns, because it was going right through their backyard. I did not get paid for any of that, but I was doing that as a county supervisor representing constituents. For the fair, I came on the board. The fair was in need. As a taxpayer, we've given them some money to help. I started a program to help support that fair for marketing and supporting that fair. Do I have to do that? No, but I'm doing it because I am a county supervisor and I feel that there is a strong need for that. I've given hundreds of hours into that. I'm working on another project for economic development, working on drafting up a $100,000 grant for county businesses, for businesses in this county that have a dream to move on to other markets internationally. I'm contributing my time and effort in that. I thought that project would be done by now. It is not, and I don't see it's happening anytime soon. Or it will be soon, but that is all given time that I've put in as a county supervisor that I'm not getting reimbursed for and I'm not paying for. So that's putting myself in the equation. But as just an elected official, when you take on this role, you are serving your people. There should be a minimum base that say, hey, you get $300 a month. If your committee chair decides to cancel the meeting, you're still doing work outside of committee meetings. Again, we take an oath to serve the people, and you don't know what committees you're going to be on. Some people do a lot more than others, or have been in terms a lot longer and have more knowledge base. They work hard for that. So if not this coming forward, this salary of 65 or 75, I think 65 is efficient, but a consistency with that. So perhaps if you are in term 1, you make 65. If you are in your second term and it's consistent, you make 72, maybe a 3-step. So you show that you've been dedicated to your county, that you've been consistent, and yet it does motivate supervisors to work harder. That's a suggestion that I'm putting forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Dan?
Initially, I've always been in favor of per diem, And I still believe that the best way to do it would be to have a hybrid. That's totally illegal, I know that. And I sort of support this now because it really does put everybody on an equal basis. If you really look at all the legislative bodies around us, be it town board, village, state legislator, federal legislator, everybody gets a salary. Hardly anybody gets a per diem. Well, I used this argument to somebody and they came back and says a lot of county boards are paid by per diem, and that probably comes from years and years ago. County boards only met once or twice a year, and then they had committee meetings, and that's what it covered their salary. They paid so much for a county board meeting and then paid the committee meetings. That's maybe why they paid. But you take like the city council's salary, everybody else's salary, and the thing that really tripped me in favor of this more or less is that pretty much everybody is equally paid with all the meetings and that, right around the $6,500, $5,800 mark, I think, if I remember correctly. And this gets rid of all this bantering and arguing that's been going on, in my opinion, for the last 10, 15 years. And it sets it on a salary and it makes it fair to everybody because we're all equally elected by the same amount of people. And we all equally serve. We all do, some will spend more time, some will spend less time. That's always going to happen. So I'm sort of in favor of a salary. I think I'm the one that suggested 7,500. I'll take the blame for that. And I used as a city council an example, and they have a budget of $30 million or so thereabouts. We have a budget of $75 million, and historically, corporations that have higher budgets and et cetera, the board of directors gets paid a little bit more. That's part of my reasoning there. We have a very big budget, so we're very important people.
In their own minds.
I understand that myself and or anybody from the island in the future is an anomaly in this whole equation as far as time goes, but crunching the numbers, and I would think that most people have, when you look at the variation between $6,500 or $7,500 for an annual stipend, based off of what's being proposed as the new federal minimum wage requirement of $15 an hour, if you look at the numbers, that's putting anywhere from 36 to 40 hours a month that we need to do to get that compensation. And I'm sure there's some that do less than that, there's some that do a lot more than that. So I don't think it's out of the scope of numbers that the wage that's being proposed is wrong. My offering to any change on this, regardless of the compensation, would be the extra given to a chairman's position of the committee. To me, I think that's just, it's for $20, it isn't worth it. You're either on it, you're in it, we're all getting a job as a committee chair. To me, it's pointless to get another $20. But to the point of the numbers, it boils down to the $15 an hour that's being proposed that the big hype over now is federally. So based off of either 35 or 40 hours a week, a month that we would put in. I think most of us do that. You know, when you're counting portal, time travel, going to meetings, whatever it is. So I think we're on this page. It seems like a lot of money, but at the end of the month, it's right where the nation is right now, or wants to be, so we're not out of line.
Susan?
I just want to comment on the 1,500 and the various convention opportunities. I believe in conventions and workshops and so on, and I probably started the can of worms of going to the WCA events, the ambassador program and some other things that I did, but I think there has to be a limit. I don't mean that you should be limited on what you go to, but I do think there has to be a limit on what we spend for ourselves going. We limit our department people, and there are technical people that have to go because they're gaining new knowledge and best practices and so on. So I think we need to limit it, and then we each pick and choose what's important to us. And if it's, if we want to go to more, then we do it on our own dime. It just seems reasonable that we draw the line at some point, and that seems like a decent place to draw it.
Megan? Oh, I'm sorry. Nissa?
So I want to add something to what Laura said. I'm in agreement with her that just because you're not in a meeting doesn't mean that you aren't fielding calls, you aren't involved in other stuff. Pretty much everyone here knows I have a special needs child. So that being said, being on like Human Services, which was a committee I definitely wanted to be on, I've become the unofficial person that the parents call. And that's not just within this county. I have friends in other counties where they get a diagnosis for their kid and they say, what do I do next? Granted, some of that I knew way before I ever got elected because my son's 16. I've been dealing with this forever. But now, being on human services and stuff, I can give them better direction on who to call, even if it's a different county, what the department they need to, what the job title is that somebody they need to reach. So, I mean, that in that respect, even if I'm not in a meeting, doesn't mean I don't get a weekly call from someone asking a question. And like I said, not even necessarily in this county. I just now, because of being in that committee, I know, I have a better knowledge of where to direct someone.
I'll make a motion to pass resolution 2019-51 as is printed.
Second. David?
I was hoping we'd switch gears before we made that decision.
You're hoping what?
That way we could switch gears briefly and before we made that decision. As many of you, if not all of you know, I tend to play scenarios out in things that I look at. So I'm looking at this list, 1, compensation C, a chairperson of the subcommittee, of the subunit, gets the extra $250 per year, okay? So my question then is, when the chair is not available for the committee and the vice chair takes over, how is that handled?
We did discuss that, and just based on the frequency of how that occurs, the admin committee decided that we don't need to make an adjustment.
Well, my personal view is based on the relatively minor activity I have as a chair, that I'm with Joel getting rid of the money altogether. You know, I don't see a logic to keeping that in that respect then, if there are choices to do that. What about meetings? There is only one committee. Yes, I sit on it. That meets typically more than once a month. What's the variable there, if any? I'm playing scenarios and just looking for the answers. I'm not favoring anybody. I'm not changing any direction. I'm taking the verbiage as presented.
The committees, the way that it's structured now is the committees would meet as necessary. So if you meet twice a month in 1 month, that's fine. If you meet and then don't meet the following month, or you do 3 meetings in a month, it's part of your salary.
That's been discussed and understood, because that one particular committee does typically, more often than not, meet twice a month.
Yep.
So the board members all were aware of that.
But yes, I mean, I think we've been clearing that all the way through, is that with this new structure, the committees meet as necessary, and there'll be some committees that meet more often, or may meet at certain, like for example, legislative, we haven't been as active, but if there's something that comes up on the budget, I know we had planned to have multiple meetings scheduled just to react to the state budget. Those were all in the docket. Potentially, we didn't need them, but we had that all lined up, should we need them. So we understood that when we put this together.
The difference is this committee is, for 20 years, always met, considerably more. One of the reasons why some members simply don't want to be on that committee is because of how often it does meet. So then the extra pay for the vice chair when the county board chair is not available and the vice chair sits in, then that would be the same treatment then? No additional?
Correct.
Okay. The compensation reimbursement procedures are, if I'm looking at a salary, are we still filling out some kind of a form?
No.
For the salary, you would not need to fill out a form because you get paid this on a monthly basis. The only thing you need to submit would be your, anything related to your reimbursement as far as that $1,500. But and also you'd submit your reimbursement for mileage. Mileage is not part of the compensation package. And again, that was left out separate mainly because obviously we are spread out through the entire county, so the mileage would not be,
Okay.
fair.
Now I read that a little bit better that way, because it does say all requests for reimbursement, and that is only underneath the mileage, foods, and so forth. Okay.
Correct.
This is not directed at an individual, but this has been a verbiage issue I've had since every time we've ever looked at this. It's not intended to be directed at anybody, but the choice of words. And some of you might by now know where I'm talking about.
Oh.
It's the supervisor residing on the island. And it states, is eligible to be reimbursed for one round-trip ferry ticket per day. That has always been an issue for me, because technically if he spends overnight, that's 2 days. And I know you don't operate that way, but it is not written that way. So if he's gone for 3 days to a conference, or she, as the case may be, he technically, as written, that's the nature of my world, it means that he has the authority to ask for it. And I know he has never done that or never willing to
Well,
do
I'll
that.
comment on that, because ferry tickets are purchased round trip one time.
Right. I understand that, but this has been one of those little set of words that
I
have
think
always been
it's
there.
worded just right, because the tickets are good forever.
But what my comment was,
Get rid of
trip
per
off
day.
island.
Then get rid of the words per day if you want to do it, round trip ticket, period.
Yeah, what do you put, right, round-trip ticket?
No, I
per-
understand what he's saying, but that's just,
It has always
that's how
been,
your brain was wired, I get it.
it's been a sore spot for me visually forever, because if I had a builder do that to me.
Yes, per day. So you can excuse the words per day and be fine.
Okay. Is that possible to get the per day taken out of there, because, that works for me.
As needed?
Or
We can make it as an amendment when we do that.
Okay. And my last comment will be what I could consider the equivalent of accountability. When I was basically informed that my supervisor was retiring, was not going to be running, I has to run. I never even investigated what the fees were, what his potential payment was going to be. When I got elected and tried to figure that out, I'm thinking, oh, we don't have a base fee? Because as a town board member, now retired, my town does a base fee and a price per meeting. It's set up in that configuration. Many of the towns operate that way. I saw it as variation of accountability. If I don't attend a meeting, I don't get paid. And if there's a flat fee, I look at a lack of accountability for making an effort. I know for a fact that I will have a difficulty making meeting dates. And I'm very appreciative of the chairs of my other committees that are willing to work around that schedule for me, just the nature of my business. But I have a difficulty with the idea of being a flat payment for everything, regardless of whether or not you attend or not. That, as far as the accountability to your constituents, I'd be willing to bet if you polled the majority of your constituents, they wouldn't know what committees you sit on, or whether or not you attend, or how they'd even be able to figure out if you do attend.
But maybe the next election cycle, if you had an opponent, that opponent would say,
If
Dave
you
hasn't
had
shown
one.
up
Yeah.
at 15 of the 19 committee meetings he was supposed to.
Agreed. If you have one. So that's one of my problems with the salary-based pay. But I'm done.
Laura?
Just to reiterate, I think this simplifies things. We don't know unless we try. I think with this county board in the few next probably terms, that I would hope that anyone going into this position shows up for their job and their duties that they take their oath to office to. And if there's a day where we have majority of people, we're not making a quorum, and they're based on salary but not showing up to do their work, then I think we got bigger problems in our county and our community as a whole. I just don't see that happen.
Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to that C, the $250, if you're chairman of a committee, you get that $250 regardless of how many meetings or how few meetings that you chair?
As it's currently written, yes.
The reason I'm saying that is I chair a committee that meets twice a year. It should be $40. But that chairperson would still get the $250 the way this is written.
Correct.
As well as what David's saying, if you're on RPC, you may meet twice a month and it exceed way over the 12 meetings, that you chair. So I guess it's a wash, the way I look at it. And then the other question I have is probably to the administrator. You must have crunched the numbers of, if we went to the salary, how much more or less would the taxpayers be paying than if we stay, where we are?
Again, so if you recall last month when I included it in the packet, I think again, just based off I did a 2-year trend, and it was almost very close or comparable. So it just depends on the year. So I'd say that with the salary as it was presented at the $6,500, let me clarify, was pretty much a wash. Because it just depends on, like, for example, I know 1 year we were higher because we had the community center. So our cost overall with committee meetings was higher. So again, we'll have higher or lower years, but in general, it's pretty much a wash at that amount. And again, now with the proposal to go to the $7,500, obviously that adds on $20,000, but we also removed, do the math, I had $500 just in terms of the vice chair, so it ends up being $19,500. But again, that would be the difference as it was before, but again, it would depend on the per diem method of what we have in terms of meetings overall for everything that we do.
I have a feeling that if we go to the salary, some of the out-of-town meetings, you know, the people won't participate as much. So it would,
Excuse me, Grant?
it may get closer to a wash, you know, either way on the taxpayer. And even if it is,
That's true.
you know, several $1,000s per taxpayer, I mean, we're looking at, you know, maybe 5 cents or, you know, very, very small amount of money.
Vinnie?
How does it, maybe I don't fully understand how it works now, but how does it impact the departments? So like if Ag and Extension meets every other month and RPC meets twice a month, and then they're billed for their committee members per meeting, is it going to be percentage of department budget now that they pay in, or how does that impact like each department's budget?
Okay, so
Yeah.
this to me is, I guess, one of the pros is that right now we go through every single department in their budget has those lines for meetings, and we project both the meetings and also we project potential travel.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think someone mentioned that's very difficult for us to do. So from my standpoint, this cleans that all up. So in essence, what we will do is in each one of the budgets, we're going to pull out everything related to those expenses for our meetings. Obviously, there's still the citizen costs for the committees that have citizens on them. But in essence, we'll have a county board budget. In the county board budget, we're going to have the salaries, which we know what they are because they're a set salary. We're going to have the $1,500 set up for each supervisor in that line, and we'll have a mileage line. So from a budgeting, tracking, it's a piece of cake. And so what happens is you'll see each one of the department budgets, we'll strip that out, so you'll see that part of the budget go down. It'll be hard to see that amount because obviously the salaries have gone up, but you'll see that part just taken out. And the department heads, and they don't have to worry about that aspect of it. It's just part of the county board budget, and you guys conduct business that way.
Thank you.
Bob?
I guess the other way to look at this, I mean, and I haven't been a part of any committee meetings to discuss this, but I guess I look at, you know, there's obviously been a lot of effort, a lot of study, a lot of comparisons, a lot of time, a lot of, you know, a lot of people in this room have hashed this out. And it's sort of, I guess you could look at it as an experiment, and there's a lot of benefits, and we're only deciding this for the next 2 years. So in 2 years, we can sit down and say, well, we got to tweak it, or we got to go back. I mean, I don't know. I think the folks that have looked at this have done a pretty good job kind of hashing it out. So I feel pretty comfortable with what the proposal is here.
David?
Well, I guess I'll disagree with Bob. I'm comfortable with the per diems. I guess I always have been. You get, as Dave alluded to, you get paid for the meetings that you come to. Not knowing committees that you're on, you get the base salary of the $150 for the county board if you served on no committees. We all serve on extra committees, so we know it's going to be more than that. We all put in hours with constituents and so forth, but you know, I have a half hour each way traveling time to come here. Others don't have time, so I mean traveling time, so there's a lot of comparables that you could enter into this discussion. But $7,500 we're talking about comparing to the city. If you look at the other counties, what they're being paid, we're certainly up at the top level already without going to a higher amount of $7,500. $65 was more than adequate if you're going that way. Regarding the chairpersons of the committees, I'm currently chairing negotiations. In the next couple of years, there may be no meetings of that committee. I serve on Highway Safety Committee that meets 4 times a year. For a chairperson to be paid for meetings like that, that's that's an extra, $500 if you should chair committees like that. I don't think there then should be an amount for that. I don't know, I really think the per diems reflect what you're doing. Other counties work it differently and put caps on amounts for days that we don't have in place. And then also, there's one other item here I'm trying to find now, is the, regarding the compensation for mileage from your place of work. That came up some time ago, and it was decided that if you were working in Door County, you got paid to travel from that place of work. This is the reverse. If you're working outside of the county, let's say I worked in Luxembourg or Green Bay, then I get paid from the county line, even though I'm working there. That seems, I don't understand that. So, and going back to what Ken said about each of the committees, it was, I believe, only a couple of years ago that it was changed from a county board budget to put into the departments to reflect the cost of that. Now we're saying, no, we don't need to do that, let's go back the other way. I agree that we could be doing per diems and still have a county board budget without assigning those numbers to each department. So I won't be voting for this in any way.
David?
I'm going to ask for Corporation Counsel's assistance in making an amendment, if you would help me in understanding the correct way to propose that. To
Make a motion to amend.
Okay, I'll make a motion to amend subsection C, supervisor residing on Washington Island, and he brought up a valid point to me. That's what our little discussion was. The motion would be to remove the word one between for and trip and round trip, and remove per day. And the comment he made was that as written, it implies you only get paid, if you're going to follow my wording, which is the idiosyncrasy of the per day statement, then the word one should also needs to be removed because it implies you get one for the year. So I'm guessing that dies.
So it's-
Well, I'll second that for you.
You're making,
That's my
I'm
motion.
just making sure you're done with.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that is what my motion is, to remove the word one and remove the per day.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. Any discussion on the amendment to the motion?
Yeah, so read what your sentence will say.
The sentence would say, and when he brought this up, it made sense to me as well, is eligible for reimbursement for round-trip ferry ticket and then continuation on two, which is what you have been doing in your case forever.
That should say for a round trip ferry ticket.
Okay, for a, replace one with a.
Sure. That makes sense, because in the nature of how that works, that's one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're good with that change, Dave? That he,
Yep.
so you're good with that as a second? Okay.
So we're going to replace the word one with a?
Yep.
Round trip ferry ticket.
Any other comment on the amendment?
That's what it is.
Okay, so
And he's not complaining, so. That matches what has been happening, not as it's been worded.
okay.
We can do a voice vote on that part of it.
Yes, correct. Okay, so we're going to do this by voice vote on this part of it, because it's not, quote, really money. This is only on the amendment to the motion. This is not on the motion. Okay? Linda?
We're just amending the addendum, right? We're not voting on the resolution.
We are not voting on the resolution. We're voting on an amendment to the resolution. So all in favor of the amendment? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So the amendment is now part of the resolution.
Can I make a second motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the subsection 1 compensation A from 7,500 and its associated math to 6,500.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, so this one, we need to go to the voter board. Hold on. Megan?
How much of a vote is needed on this one?
Same thing,
No,
42, right?
no, this is this amendment, so it's a
Oh,
So it would
simple
be
It's
majority.
not an amendment, it's a simple majority, yeah.
Simple
Okay,
majority.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before we go to vote? Linda?
So if, right now, I don't support the resolution, so does it really matter whether I support the amendment or not?
The answer, well, I can answer that. I think you should assume right now that it's going to pass. So you want to get it as clean as you want, so that way if it would pass under the supermajority, you're still comfortable with the rate. So while you still think you might vote against it, you still probably want to consider the amendment
Consider the amendment.
as a fiscal impact that way. So I think you should
Okay.
consider this as
All right.
a vote that
Thank you.
you're concerned about.
And just to correct and clarify this, at 65, that would be a wash, as if what we were spending as a county board in the previous years going forward with this at 65.
Correct.
David?
And just to support Linda, I'm not in favor with the resolution either, but I wanted to put in stone a variation that makes more sense if we are going that route.
Anybody else? If not, we're going to go to the voter board to vote for the amendment to reduce it from 75 to 65. Okay? Ready? Whenever you're ready. That is passed, 11 yes, 9 no, 1 absent. Okay, so that has amended the motion or the resolution to 6,500, not 7,500. All right. John?
Is the $20 for chairman in or out of this motion?
My motion did not include an alteration from number C, letter C, which was a chairman of a subcommittee.
Okay, so
It's
the
still-
chairman's job would still be there.
Still in there, correct.
I will say that after listening to David, there are plenty of committees that meet occasionally, and to give them the $250 for that heading into as well is out of place. Where we do it as the meeting occurs at $20 does make far more sense procedurally.
John?
But I also want to say that if anybody here realizes that the chairman holds one big hammer, he decides what the agenda is. I don't know if most people set the agenda. There is some responsibility to that, and that should be worth something.
And I do set my agenda, so.
Benny?
I feel for the chairman as well. Being a newer county board member, I go to the chairman a lot when I have questions outside of meeting about this, how this correspondence or how this works. So I think there's a job to the chairman, whether you have 2 meetings or 5 meetings or 10 meetings, there's still additional work. So
And to Supervisor Ninus' statement, when the chairman of the subcommittee is not able to attend the meeting, then the vice chair is the one that sets that agenda and so forth.
Okay, anything else before we take the resolution to vote? What?
If this resolution fails, is it coming back again, or do we just stay as is until our deadline of December 1st comes around?
If this resolution would fail, there would be no reason to bring it back up to admin. It would just remain as is. I mean, this is the opportunity, this is your last opportunity to change it prior to the next cycle.
Right. That's what I was going to comment. Any of these changes take place with the next election, not until then, correct?
Correct. 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 So it would be like this for the next 2-year cycle. Okay, we'll go to the voter board.
And just recall, we need 14 votes.
to pass.
So if it does not pass, it fails. That's the 14.
Okay, that has failed on a vote of 12 yes, 8 no, and 1 absent. so it will remain as is for the next 2-year cycle. Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break, okay? So be back at 11:10. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started again.
Why do we need to wait?
I don't know.
Bathroom break.
Probably.
Welcome back. Before we move on to the next business issue, something that has come up, a couple people have approached me on, and I thought about and I forgot about it before, was, do you want the admin committee, we can't do it anymore today, but you want the admin committee to relook at including the $1,500 for expenses for seminars, conferences, et cetera, to be part of the remuneration package. So right now, we would have to come back next month or prior to the annual meeting, prior to paper takeout, and adjust for the $1,500 on per diem basis. David?
And that will, where the previous system that we just discussed was not paying anybody for attending the meetings, it was just the expenses for attending the event.
Correct.
That discussion would include limitations on dollar values for compensation.
No, you would.
So in other words, the 1,500.
We have turned down the salary at this point in time, okay? So it would be on a per diem basis. But what has been suggested was we include the $1,500 as a limitation per supervisor to attend conferences.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what part of the conversation was going to contain because of the change in pay rate.
Dan?
Well, to make things clear, you made the statement that this was the last chance we have to set the compensation for the next term, and that's not really true.
No, you could go up to the annual meeting, which would be in November.
Correct.
Right. But I'm assuming we've kind of settled the salary thing at this point in time. We're not bringing it back. But you want to bring back the 1,500?
You might have. This has been going on.
It's not bad.
John?
If you're talking about bringing this $1,500 back, would that allow us to take a revote on that, what we just did, and then the 12 people that voted for it could win that election?
You'd have to do a reconsideration, right?
You could do a reconsideration, but what would probably be the most likely scenario, just looking at the months, would be to bring back an entire new compensation package and vote on it as a whole, and it could include that $1,500 in place of what we're doing now.
So that would give us another kick at the cat.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, we're not.
That's, okay.
Kick the can down the road sounds better.
What did he say?
I don't want to kick cats.
Right now, within this county board meeting, it's dead.
Right.
It could be brought back by a motion for reconsideration from somebody that voted against the resolution next month. And then we could take up a discussion of some variance of what was proposed.
Okay. But separately from a reconsideration motion,
We can bring forward.
we can bring back or bring forward a new resolution or a new suggestion,
Correct.
a new option to do the $1,500 per supervisor on an annual basis for registration, hotel, and conferences.
The reimbursable expenses, correct, yeah.
Right. John?
Does the right to bring up this vote to reconsider go with the majority of the vote?
The winning side.
So the 12 people that voted for this, did they have the right to bring it back, or does the 8 that voted against it have the right to bring it back? Because the majority is the 12.
But the winning side is the...
Is the winning side the one that's got the hammer?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to know.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Counselor is absolutely correct, because what was said at the beginning If this fails, it stays the same.
Correct.
So I think reconsideration by a no voter is probably absolutely the correct way of doing it.
Ken?
I agree with Biz, by the way. We were told this was it. If we keep bringing this back, we're no better than the squawkers that complained about us not listening. We took a vote with the understanding this was it. Now, because you don't like what we did, well, now you'll bring it back and try it again. I mean, we're not 3 years old crying, gimme, gimme, gimme that candy bar, okay? This is it. This was it. That was my understanding.
Yep.
So I don't want any change. We're done. Now, if the administrative committee wants to bring a proposal back that doesn't affect this vote at all, I'm okay with that.
And that's what I was asking.
That's right. I would be okay with that because that's something different, as long as Corp Council agrees. But when you're told this is it, you don't cry back, cry again and cry until you get your way. That's it. We voted, we're done.
Laura?
I just want to just make a comment, is that I didn't hear anyone crying that they wanted it to be a salary. This is something that was proposed to simplify it, to get rid of time cards, to control costs, to know what our expectations were, and putting a limit on your training. So I just didn't agree exactly how that supervisor had made a comment, and I just wanted to clarify my point of view on that.
Vinnie?
This is just a general point. I think the $1,500 is great to, kind of keep things in check. But I think we should be a team about it because we're 21 people that represent the county. So if a couple people are more available or more interested in representing the county in Madison or in other places and conventions, I don't think that should be seen as a negative thing. I just think the check should be in total. And maybe the perspective, it might have been in the last meeting report, but where do we sit with that? Are people going way over that amount now, as 21? Or are we not meeting that amount? Or, is it a problem, I guess? I don't know.
Well, all right, you put me on a hot seat. I'm just going to be totally honest and just say it. Yes, it's
Yeah.
a problem. And the
Okay.
problem is that we have
Yeah.
certain committees that love to go travel and do stuff, and it's not that they're working,
Yeah.
but they all feel that they all have to go. And
Yeah.
is it a problem? Yes. I'll
Okay.
say yes, it is. And it's not equitable to some of the departments because our departments are limiting the number of people that go, but,
Yeah.
and they're saying that to me. And so I'm just telling you that. So yes, it is an issue. And
No, it helps to know.
I'm not trying to criticize anyone, but I'm just answering the question honestly.
No, it helps to know. Thank you. That's why I asked.
Megan?
So then, on that basis, in those committees, either our county board representatives have the opportunity to listen to those departments and limit their spending or not. Correct? Those are choices and decisions that they're making. These committees, these people, they know it's a problem. That's been communicated? That it's hard on their budgets?
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
Mr. Chairman, aren't we kind of off topic and out of the agenda list?
Saved by Bell. Getting there.
No, you're not.
We're not there yet, according to Grant, but we're maybe
I
getting
heard
there.
it getting there.
We're off base here.
No, we're not.
I mean, we've had a lot of discussion.
On Megan's comment. I was a department head. If my county board chairman, the county board chairmans told me to jump 2 feet high, I had to jump 2 feet high.
Yep.
We don't argue with our county board supervisors as a department head. Except for me and you.
Okay.
That's a different issue.
I'm not saying argument whatsoever. Communication and argument are two very different things.
Right. Yep. Again, I'll just reiterate, I think there's a level of uncomfort that the department heads have in terms of trying to have discussions in terms of travel and conferences. And again, there's just certain areas where, again, rightfully so or not, a lot of the associations know that if they can draw, let's be honest, WCA, for example, they know to draw on the supervisor, that's their bread and butter as far as maintaining their association. Plain and simple. Other associations know that very well. And they know if they can draw on the supervisors, they get more support for their programs. It's just straightforward facts on that. So it's hard for department heads to try to limit that part of it. So, I mean, if there is one thing, if that would be considered, I would tell you I would fully support it because it still makes the supervisor then responsible for trying to prioritize what they think is important instead of trying to do all of it. And it puts the same level of decision-making then on the supervisor to try to make those types of decisions the same as the staff is trying to decide, do I do this training, do I do this conference? Even though they like to do it all, they still have to prioritize what they want to do in their careers to enhance themselves, whether it's a conference or training. And I think it's just, it helps in that aspect.
David?
I guess I'd just like to comment to what Ken just said. I think probably 15 years ago, I proposed that the supervisors had a limit on some of the extras that they go to, just as departments do. They need to decide what's important and get paid to attend those, but not go to everything that's there.
Correct.
And I think the administrative committee knows some of those issues, and I think they need to take an initiative to put together something that addresses those concerns.
And I agree with that.
Dan?
Over the years, the administrative committee has tried to address that, and they've tried to address it in certain ways, and it hasn't worked. And nobody's come up with a solution or a way to put it in writing, how to eliminate people, the number of people that go to these meetings and that. We put it in the budget. That's what we put all this stuff in the budget for initially in the last few years, is try to eliminate all kinds of people going to all kinds of committee meetings outside of the area to pick up the compensation. That's why we did it that way, but it really hasn't worked.
Vinnie?
Then I would totally agree with putting the $1,500 limit on, because as a new county board member, you're excited to participate in things, and you don't know that that's a problem when, because you don't know the history of 15 years ago or what's happened since then. You think these are available, they're interesting, I'll do my job better if I attend them. I'll take time from my other full-time job and attend them with good intention. So I think it'd be better to just have a limit so people know they've crossed the bound or they're close to crossing it, so you don't feel like you're kind of accused for doing that when that wasn't your thought. So, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on.
Thank you.
Amendment of Chapter 11.05 Door County Code, all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicle routes. Mr. Ninus.
Well, motion for approval of ordinance 2019-07.
I'll second that.
Okay, now with that said, there's an error in the typing of this. On line 9 in red, it should say E, not double E. So do I need to do something to change that, or can we proceed with right now the way we are? Grant?
Motion to amend.
Motion to amend ordinance on line showing county E, not double E.
I'll second that.
The first occurrence. It does say, it's County E in the first occurrence. The second occurrence is correct to say double E, but the first occurrence is just County E.
Well, line 33.
So by voice vote, we'll be voting for the amendment to change the first occurrence to, what line is it, John?
Line 9.
9.
Line 30.
No, line 36.
Line 36.
Item
Oh, I
9.
see. Item 9,
Item
line
9, line
36,
36.
sorry.
Just E, correct?
The line, item 9 should say County E from Red Cherry Road. And then line 37 says County EE.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to voice vote on the amendment to change EE to E
In line 36.
on line 36, yes, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the amendment has carried. Do you want to say anything else, John?
Okay, now, this came to us from the Bailey's Harbor Town Board. It was voted upon 5-0 by those. They want to amend their ordinance 2018-02 to read what we have in front of us here. When it came to the highway department, we had quite a discussion on this, because those of you that are familiar up there, this E is the causeway of Kangaroo Lake. Now, Kangaroo Lake, the road there is not an ideal situation to begin with. We've had some issues with people fishing, putting lawn chairs there, handicap, people observing it. But Bailey's Harbor wanted it, wanted to try it. So generally, we did go along with what the locals want. But I will tell you right now that the vote was 3-2 to approve this. And I felt at that time that the highway department has got a very, very short lease on this should something come up. But we said, let's give it a shot. But now those that voted against it maybe want to say something here. That's up to them. But I just wanted to lay it all out on the table for you folks.
Any other discussion? Randy?
I vote against this at Highway. County E and Double E, they're main thoroughfares to get from Bailey's Harbor side over to Egg Harbor. A lot of traffic on those roads. This time of year is just crazy amount of traffic up north. Not in favor of this, and I'm going to vote against it again today.
David?
My personal experiences are no different than Supervisor Halstead. This is not a good set of roads. There's already people on the road. There's bicyclists, there's runners, there's other individuals on that set of roads that are clearly there to get from point A to point B and have no interest in paying attention to anything else that's on that road, including the causeway. The causeway has been numerous close accidents that I've seen.
That's why I brought it up.
Megan?
I was just driving on Double E last week, and there were at least 4 instances that I had, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? What are these people doing? With cars, bikes, people walking, loose dogs. It was what makes me stay south of town during this time of year.
Anybody else? Ken?
I also was up there quite a bit over the last week and a half. Went over that causeway numerous times, and although I seconded the motion here, I'm not going to support it either, because you had people fishing the whole length, both sides. You had cars going back and forth constantly. Never once did I go over it by myself. There's always traffic there. You put your four-wheelers on there, there are going to be accidents. So I'm not going to support it either.
Linda?
You said the town requested?
Bailey's Harbor Town requested that a vote 5-0. They requested this. This comes from the Bailey's Harbor Town Board.
So the Bailey's Harbor Town Board unanimously supported that it be designated as an ATV?
Yes, all 5 members.
And I'm guessing that is so that ATVs and UTVs can haul fishing equipment and gear and all that, and probably go to the restaurant on the other side and back and forth? Is that, they thought economically it was a wise move?
In reality, all I got is what Bailey's Harbor submitted, and they just approved it and was asking for us to approve it. So I just wanted to bring it up and wanted this discussion because it is the causeway. I want everybody to be aware of that.
Dave?
A side note, and maybe Supervisor Bolton can answer this. I believe all the downtown roads, the congested area, are all ATV approved?
Not all of them, but there is a route through
A
town.
good portion of them?
If you look at the,
I don't think they supplied it. I mean, they have their own ordinances for their own town roads.
right.
Yeah, they're removed from the county.
Right.
From the county's officials stating of it, yeah. There is a way around this, and we didn't discuss it with the Bailey's Harbor Town Board. And maybe we should have, because this issue appeared in Brussels at one time to get to Gardner. And then they came, and I happened to be in the Brussels Town Board, and I said, I don't think this is going to fly. I talked to Mr. Kaloji, and we didn't like the road they was taking, and Mr. Cook can probably heard to it was K. And I said, no way this is going to go.
I said
so
the
they
same
came
thing.
before us that time, and we found an alternate route. We did not take that avenue with Bailey's Harbor Town Board, but they could go around it. I just want to put them on the table.
First question, again, new guy question. what's the procedure if we pass this today and there was a problem? Does the town say they don't want it and then it comes back, or can the highway department override, or like what?
I said, I believe on this issue that the county would have the say, and there's a very short leash on this should something arise.
Okay. And then just adding, I believe that is part of the factor for the town is to recognize the increase in tourism and, just giving people the option and the ability. I don't see any problem on double E. Double E is to the north, and that doesn't cross the causeway. County E is the one that crosses the causeway. And while that can be congested and with people fishing on the causeway and whatnot, I think part of, again, the thought is that, well, you have your UTV or your ATV, that's how you're getting to your fishing hole. That's how you're getting down there. And that's part of the giving people options for getting around town. And this is part of the network of UTV, ATV corridors that the Bailey's Harbor Town Board has been working on for a few years here, so.
John?
I'd like to also remind everybody that an ATV and a UTV can be operated by a 12-year-old if they take a safety course, and we're talking motorized vehicles, usually with wheels that are conducive to riding on a heavy paved or a hard paved surface. When you have that young age out there driving a motor vehicle, I have safety concern issues with those types of things, and I've said it in my town when I was town chairman. I don't like the fact that a lot of the towns down south, I think, have opened up all the town roads to ATVs, and I don't want to ever have to see an outcome that I've been accustomed to in my job. I just couldn't support this being on a busy county road, and I think Double E is just as busy. At times I've traveled those roads for a lot of years. I don't like the young age that it opens it up to as well. It's not just about fishermen coming to and fro. You are opening it up, and then you've got to have the people again that think a golf cart's okay and it's not okay according to state statutes. So there's a lot of fluidity to these types of things that we're approving or not approving, but I think safety should be the main concern.
John?
I would just wonder if we approve this or don't approve this, do we kick both double E out and E out, or do we just kick out E? Because if you kick out double E, well, then you don't really give them a route to get on the other side. So that's something to decide. Do we want to kick them both out or just one out, if we kick any out?
So if they use double E, they still have the route. Vinnie?
I don't have experience with this, but is there any consideration for the intersections like E and A and double E and A have had incidents on them already because it's just a hard space for cars to see and cars come really fast down A? So is there any other kind of warning signal or, a slow down or something? Because, bicyclists have been hit there, so ATV could be as well. I don't know if it's an intersection, if that comes into play with any of these decisions, but.
Randy?
Yeah, before the April election, Don City came to the Highway Committee with concerns about safety on the causeway. And I can vouch that County A is dangerous. You try going on there with farm machinery. You're taking your life in your own hands.
Susan?
If we defeat this, might we defeat it with the idea of it going back to highway? And they look and they talk with the town of Bailey's Harbor about an alternate route? I don't know whether this is going to pass or not. I didn't know anything was a problem until I'm hearing this discussion, but it sounds fairly serious.
Ken?
If it is turned down, the town will know it. They will come back to the highway committee with a different plan to circumvent the causeway. That's the way it would work, and then we could go with that one if we wanted. That's if this one fails, okay? They have every right to come back to the highway committee with a change plan, a different route that would circumvent the causeway.
Laura?
No.
No.
Pete?
Anybody else?
Okay, so we'll try it on a voice vote, although she's already got it up.
It's an order.
Oh, it's ordinance,
Ordinance.
sorry, it's an ordinance, we got to go to the voter board, okay.
What are we doing?
Ready?
We're just walking through it, we should-
We're voting on it as is written,
That's
correct? Voting the whole thing.
That has failed, 7 yes, 13 no, and 1 absent. Okay. Oral committee reports, anybody? Review committee minutes, Dave? What?
Under oral committee reports, I guess I'd like to comment to last week's finance meeting. The committee was agreeable to have the 5 parcels from the city that were taken in REM to consider giving those to the city for their affordable housing project that they're working on. It's the first initial step, and it'll be coming back to committee and to county board, and Ken could add more insight into that if he chose, but just so the county board's aware.
Okay. Anything, Matt?
No, I think it's a good summary. We're,
Yeah.
yep.
Helen?
Just to keep everybody on the same page, Health and Human Services and are planning to merge and are in the process of doing so. It seems to be going forward nicely. A lot of conversations have been had. The 2 departments are, I think, merging quite well. And we're now looking at what we're doing with the boards and the board structure and the citizen members that we have on both committees.
Okay. Mike?
And to add to that, we're meeting together in September, those 2 committees. So, and some more clarity will come out of that.
Susan?
I don't know if supervisors who are not on public safety or admin are aware that we've gotten correspondence from 2 companies with regard to the RFQ, and I'm just wondering if we ought to share with the other supervisors as well that correspondence, so that they may be getting questions from the public, and then they'll know what we got.
Want me to do that again?
Yeah, I was going to actually talk to you at this meeting about doing that.
Okay. So as far as this, so again, it's under the community report, so we can do it just as an update. We won't have full discussion, but we did have 2 responses from 2 different companies. One was from Curtis and one's from called AMR.
Can you remind us as to what the RFPs are for?
Sure. So the RFQ is the RFQ that we put out for looking at our emergency services and looking at potential options for, I guess, alternative ways to run our emergency services. And again, that was an RFQ that was put out in terms of looking for individual companies that might be interested in having that discussion. Again, we got 2 responses back. And what the intention to be now is to have, I guess, some follow-up meetings with them to see in what ways they could work with us. And if there is some way that we see some collaboration or some things that might work, we will go through the process of going through both public safety and admin to kind of bring that forward. Part of the process also, depending on how the responses work and what level of involvement this company might have, it may also involve working with the towns and municipalities just in terms of making sure they're aware of what we're looking at, because we do need to have their input in terms of making some of those changes, so.
Any other oral committee? Vouchers, claims, and bills. We have 2 announcements. The first one is next regular county board meeting would be August 27th at 9 a.m. Additionally, while we were here doing all of our great work today, Kelly Hindy has sent out the administrator's evaluation to you via email. It's that time again.
Seems like that's like
So
every
it'll be
3
in your
months.
email box next time you open it up. For those of you who would like a hard copy, I have hard copies up here. So if you want to come up after the meeting and pick one up, you're welcome to do that.
I did have one other announcement. Just for a reminder, in August, this for the admin and finance, just for your calendars. Traditionally, we do our joint meeting of admin and finance to review the new positions. And right now, that is set for August 20th at 9 a.m. So normally what we did is we did our meeting with finance, I think they met and went through all the general reports, and then we had, we did the joint part, and then the meeting continued on. So just block out a longer window time for admin and finance for that day,
The 27th?
the 20th.
22-0.
Oh, okay.
And then the regular admin would be after?
Correct.
You said 9 AM,
Correct.
the joint one?
Okay.
The meeting per diem code for today is 723.
That being said, Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business be transacted, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.